All right, good morning, everyone. It's an absolute delight for me here, standing in front of you to speak on a topic that is not just very important, and as Asim ji mentioned, is going to define the role of the CMAs in the future. But first of all, I would like to thank the NCMAC team, which is the National Convention for Cost and Management Accountants, the 61st event being held here. The ICMI President, Mr. Dalwadi, and the Council for allowing me to be a part of this August gathering here. I don't have any slides. I know that you usually expect slides from a professor, but I'm not going to bore you with anything visual here. Instead, I would like you to visualize a future, and I see a lot of young CMAs in this room here. I would like to, over the next 15-20 minutes, try to visualize a future, and I hope that the next 2 days, every one of us tries to find time to discuss, deliberate on what your role will be as an individual in that future, while the institute moves towards a Viksit Bharat 2047. I think each of the professional needs to find a space and a role in that future. Right? But before I get into that future, let's first understand why professional services, as we call the service businesses. So there are three types of businesses, and I'll talk about the three types in a minute, but the professional services are likely to play the most critical role in the future of the country or even the global economy. In fact, if we see the last 20-25 years of growth, the professional services and services in general have been fueling growth, and all the GDP numbers are open, and we know that the main growth happens through the service businesses, and it's likely to happen the same in the next few years. So as we see, as management educators, students of businesses, we generally see the businesses in three categories, and this is also pretty much how the GDP is divided. And these categories are more or less, and it's an important point to note here, they are more or less classified into three categories based on what are the resources they use. And when I tell you the three categories, it will be very clear. The first category of businesses are the businesses that use natural resources. And we have here Mr. Prasad from Olam Agri, which is the type of business that falls into that category. Steel, cement, textiles, which rely on natural resources. The early era of pre-industrial evolution, for centuries, the businesses that were relying on natural resources were driving the economy. Then came the second category of businesses which rely on financial capital, which are large manufacturing units, or even airlines, large units which manufacture products, food processing, and polythene manufacturing, PVC value chain, and so on. As we all know, the second growth phase happened with the Industrial Revolution, where all these businesses gained tremendous scale, scope of businesses. They were almost ruling the world in the 19th and the 20th century. And then there are the third category of businesses. All of us here in this room are a part of that, which are businesses that rely on human capital, professionals. And as we all know, currently, these are the businesses that are basically driving the economy across the world, predominantly in India as well. Right? So these three categories of businesses, or the three phases in which we have evolved over the last 400-500 years, is very important to note, because that lays the foundation in which we are going to move forward. The first phase was, if you can think of the East India Company, that was what was driving, the search for natural resources. Then came the likes of General Motors and, Coke and McDonald's, which were mostly capital driven. And now think of think of CMAs, or think of Indian IT services, think of law firms, think of banks and financial services that are driving the growth. Now, the reason why human capital intensive businesses or the professions are driving growth is simple. The first reason is that the world has become more connected. All of you are now aware that you can provide a service in one part of the world and can consume the service in the other part of the world. Of course, COVID has pushed it even further, but for the last 20 years, it was possible. In fact, if I go back a little more, past 30, 40 years it has been possible, has been shown by the Indian IT services. The second, which is more important aspect here, is that it is also driving growth because the other businesses are demanding the same quality of service from every professional. For example, if I am an Indian company, I need the same level of IT as an American company. To quote your industry, I think it is also the same, that if I am an Indian company, I need the same level of audit, same level of consulting, same level of legal services as my American competitor or an Australian or a European competitor. Right? So because the clients demand the same service, and it is possible to create a great level of service globally, is the reason why professional services are in a driver's seat over the last 20, 30 years. Right? And therefore, as you can imagine, the focus has moved from earlier on natural resources, then to capital, and now to human beings, all of us in this room here. That does not mean that the other resources are not that important. You know, even today wars are being fought for natural resources. Capital, financial capital is as important. However, the driver, and I'm choosing that word carefully, the driver of growth is now turning to be the human being. Okay. So now let's look at the more recent history of India, what has happened in the last 20, 25 years, maybe even in the last 10 years in the financial services industry, but over 30 years in the IT services industry. The single most reason why these two industries have flourished is because in 1991, the Indian government decided to open up the economy. Sorry. So what happens when you open up the economy? When you open up the economy, the clients start facing more competition. You know, they want to become better. The providers, which is the providers of professional services, and all of you, some of you are very senior in this industry, would have noticed, you start facing competition. Because the auditors from worldwide will be now accessing the Indian market. Everybody has access to the same capital. Everybody has access to human capital, to financial capital, and therefore, only the best person will win. There have been several examples in the world where one of the most famous one is in London. The City of London abolished the fixed commission of the stockbrokers, and they call it the Big Bang in the history of financial markets. The London metropolitan region became the hub of financial services in less than 10 years. The main reason was they allowed competition. Same thing happened in Japan in the late 90s. Same thing happened in Germany in the legal sector in the mid-90s. India saw that in 1991. And I think the list goes on. Now, and by the way, we are right now at a very interesting time in the history of political economy. On one hand, we are open. On the other hand, there is happening what we call as a deglobalization. There is an economic nationalism, a protectionism in certain sectors. At the same time, we are also opening up the economy in some parts of the world. Right? So, given this backdrop, the past history and the recent history, let's look at the trends. And I'm going to take you through 6 trends over the next 5-10 minutes, which I believe, and I strongly believe that the 6 trends are likely to shape up the future in which the country will realize the Viksit Bharat dream. But more importantly, I believe the professional services, the CMAs in this room, should be thinking about making a role for themselves in light of the 6 trends. Okay? So let's look at each one of them, and with each one of them, let's look at the implications for CMA. The first one, and I think all of us are aware about that. Asim ji already talked about that a few minutes back. Artificial intelligence and the automation that is happening in decision making. I think this is one of the things which is on top of the mind of every business person, every professional over the last 4 or 5 years. More precisely over the last 2 years since the generative AI has hit the world, and more recently over the last 2 months since GPT 4.0 has been unleashed upon the economy. Now, what this does, the generative AI and the artificial intelligence basically significantly disrupts the way we are making decisions. What earlier computers used to help us calculate, now AI is moving a step forward and helping us take a decision, an automated decision making. And Asim ji just mentioned about having rode a car and a bus which is autonomous, and so are going to be businesses. The audits are going to happen in an autonomous format, which by the way already has happened. If you look at some of the services such as tax filing or some of the ESG compliances are being done in an autonomous form for the last several years. Now, this fundamental shift in the way decision is making is likely, in my view, going to shape the way professionals are going to be in demand. And I don't think professionals will ever go out of demand. But the type of professionals that are going to be in demand are likely to change. And by the way, when I'm talking here about the CMA as a profession, many of these things are directly applicable to me and my colleague here from IIMA Ahmedabad in management education as well. Because we also provide advisory, we train managers, and they are facing the same demand shift in a very, very large manner. So what is it that we as professionals and CMAs in particular can do in the wake of artificial intelligence and automated decision making? First, I think the CMAs should focus on picking up jobs or services which require a large amount of subjectivity. It requires a lot of creativity. It requires a lot of human connect. And I was just talking earlier this evening with CMA Basuji on the syllabus, and it was very heartening to see that there is more subjectivity in the curriculum of ICMI that is slowly coming in. I think it would be really good for the CMS to have digital readiness at a professional level. Are you ready to, let's say, for example, understand what reports? So, for example, if you understand today the trading on the stock market, it is more or less done by algorithms. Passive funds are the most fast-growing funds in the mutual fund industry. The algos define whether your stock price will be up or down. And by the way, I don't know if you're aware, but most of the companies deploy algorithms to write the annual reports so that the stock price will go up. Right? Which is the CEO's team, which is the communications team, is deploying algorithms to increase the stock price, and the algos are fighting each other. So which means the stock market is more or less currently algorithmic as we speak already. I don't know what is going to happen in the future. But I think, therefore, the CMA of the future needs to be ready with picking up jobs which are more complex. And if you have constraint, you need to start saying no to jobs which are simpler and build what we call as a moat around your services. Picking up more complex jobs, picking up jobs which require more subjectivity, more creativity is likely to be lasting the professional and thereby the profession in general. On the other hand, I think the institute also needs to start thinking about how they can equip the professionals and make the profession more attractive by not going after things which are likely to be automated, but those things which are likely to have subjectivity. And I think there is going to be a growing market for it. It is not shrinking, it is a growing market for jobs that are going to demand subjectivity. Second trend, which is closely connected, but I wanted to touch upon that slightly separately, is the digital transformation, and connected to that is also the hybrid mode of working. Because when as professionals you try to engage with the client, it's a different scene when you are engaging in person, in the office, on the shop floor, which is where the ICWA originated from, to now a remote way of working, right? And in the connected fashion, the digital transformation is also changing the business models of your client. Till last decade, if you were doing a cost-benefit analysis of, let's take the example of Netflix that Asimji mentioned, they had a huge infrastructure in terms of providing DVDs by mail to the customers. And today, they, in fact, just 2 months back, they shipped their last DVD and they closed down the business. That business was declining for the last 11 years, since 2012. And now Netflix is a fully tech company. And just imagine the plight of the cost accountant who was working with them, who has to now evaluate not the logistics infrastructure, but to evaluate the digital movies that they are streaming. The IP regime has changed, the costs have changed, the infrastructure has changed, but if the cost accountant has to be still relevant to them, he or she needs to upgrade or upskill themselves in order to be able to understand what this digital world is going to look like. Now, in India also, of course, you know, the trend is very fast picking up. You know, an earlier DMart now has to compete with a quick commerce. A bank needs to now compete with a neobank, which has no branches. The entire cost structure goes for a change, and therefore the CMA also needs to evolve to be able to advise on the changing scenario. Right? The hybrid mode has changed the productivity of the human resources, and therefore if you are advising a client on how to invest and what are the costs of human resources, it now comes in a very, very complex manner. Where are they working? Now there is no conveyance allowance. How are they working? What kind of digital support you provide them? How do you even account for time? You know, earlier it used to be a full-time employee, now it is going to be on person hours. Everything is changing. The way companies are using human resources and delivering services, and I see a lot of complexity for the CMS to therefore calculate the cost of any product or a service manufactured and therefore give a recommendation on their costing. So what does therefore the CMA needs to do? The CMA needs to be flexible, start becoming more personalized, you know, not that one competitor in the same industry will have the same cost structure as the second competitor, and therefore one needs to start thinking more about every business model in a very personal manner. Now, of course, I see this as an opportunity, because now you need to be able to charge them more, because you are going to now study the business model in isolation and then give an advice on what can be the ideal costing model. But at the same time, it also kind of opens up a lot of opportunities for the institute, because the hybrid model gives a lot of flexibility for professionals to now take up cost accounting as a profession as well. You know, earlier you need to kind of dedicate time to become a CA or a ICMA or ICWA, a CS. Now you can do it because you have more time at hand, and by the way, all the trends are applicable to them, and therefore they also need to learn about new skills, and therefore that would be opening up new vistas, new audiences for the institute to enroll people, not just in India, perhaps across the world, right? Because of the connectedness of the world. Now, this also brings me to the third trend, which is the need for lifelong learning. So what we have observed at IIM Ahmedabad in management education, there used to be a trend about 30 years ago that you learn once and then you earn for the rest of your life. So most of us in this room who would have studied in mid-90s or before would have mostly had kind of a degree, a professional qualification, and then earned based on that for the rest of their lives, which is invest 5 to 10 years and harvest for about 40, 50 years. Over the last 20 years or 15 years to be specific, this has entirely changed. The youth today doesn't want to, they don't want to learn a lot at one go. Now, if we are older, the previous generation feels that they are not interested in learning, but it's not the case. The new model is learn and then earn some, then again learn some, then earn some, and therefore lifelong learning or continued education has become a norm. Both of us are here. I am currently looking after the one-year MBA. Before me, Professor Pingley was the chairperson of that program. It's the fastest growing program for IIM Ahmedabad and worldwide, which is the one-year MBA program, the PGBX. Why? Because people want to first work and then do an MBA. They want to do it in 1 year rather than 2 years. They want to do in smaller modules, and by the way, they want to come back after 5, 6 years to learn a little more. So with the space of changing technology, the learn once and earn over the lifetime model has been totally demolished. And therefore, now again, it's a threat. It's a threat to people who are not learning, but it's a huge opportunity, in particular for the institute, for people who are seeking new learning over and over. So what is the implication for the CMA, for the professional? So I think the CMA professional should be open, absolutely open to continuous learning. There is nothing that we know in this world, and I think the only way we can become a better professional is by learning more. My suggestion is to go out and learn beyond finance, learn about technology, learn about legal, learn about leadership, learn about management, learn about anything that you have always been fascinated to learn about but don't know. Somewhere or the other, it is going to help you come out as a better professional, and also go back to the fighting the AI when you are going to deal with subjectivity. Because being more contemporary, knowing what is happening in the world today is likely to be more useful than anything else in the future. And of course, for the institute, it's again a tremendous opportunity for the various committees, for the council to ponder upon how can you have more what we call, there is a technical term for this, micro credentials. People don't just want a degree or a diploma anymore. They want credentials. We all see that in LinkedIn, Coursera courses. We are seeing a sudden surge in the executive programs at the institute. Micro credentials which people can do it in a bullet form, 3-day, 4-day, 3-month programs, not something which is like 2 years, 5 years. And a new trend, and you can look this up on Google, is what we call as stackable degrees. Degrees which you don't earn by just going into the university once, but you get credits over a time and then it turns up into a degree. By the way, our colleagues in the medical fraternity or in defense, these are the two industries or two sectors where changes have been rampant over the last few years. No professional is allowed to continue in the profession or rises in the hierarchy unless they go back to the academy for, in case of the defense, it is the NDA every 5 years, or in medicine, what we call as continual medical education. So even these conventions like this are okay to attend and learn, but there has to be a lifelong learning, and therefore the institute can provide those capsules which will become a source of lifelong learning for the professionals. The fourth trend and I think we already spoke about that, Neeraj ji and Asim ji spoke about that earlier. We all know, and I think it is now very clear, that India is emerging as a hub for entrepreneurship and innovation, regardless of the number of startups that we are seeing in the last 14, 15 years. And after Infosys and Wipro, there was just a Flipkart, and then now every other week there is a unicorn coming on the radar. I think this is going to be a path-breaking decade and the next 2 decades on which I think the Viksit Bharat is relying on this. I don't think there is any other way other than entrepreneurship and innovation that we can achieve the 8.8 or the 9.2 GDP growth rate numbers over the next 20-25 years. Now, the implication for this for CMA and the institute are also again immense. As I said earlier, it is a threat because the models are changing. So if you don't know the new models, it's a problem. But if you can adapt to the new models of working while the incumbents are struggling with reducing the cost because the disruptors are coming in with a very new model, you can advise them. You can also advise the disruptors on how to achieve efficiency while they are scaling up with the new business model. So I think this is one of the things where, and by the way, this is true for most of the professions, lawyers, management teachers, chartered accountants, and therefore CMAs as well, that can you play on both the sides? Can you help competition beat away the disruptors, and can you help disruptors compete with the large players? So that's the 4th opportunity. Again, for CMAs, for the institute, I think it is an opportunity to also get lot more curriculum readiness in terms of catering to the startup ecosystem, catering to the entrepreneurs, catering to the innovators. Club it with the micro credentials where the new courses, new curricula are more geared towards the entrepreneurs rather than the large companies alone. The 5th trend that I would like to very briefly talk about is the rise of India as we now see in the global south. But more importantly, I think there is a multipolar world that we are now seeing. The world is no longer US-centric, especially in the last 10-12 years we have seen that it has become more multipolar. 80s and 90s saw the emergence of China and EU as very large powers against the US. But over the last 10-15 years, India, the African nations, Latin America to a large extent has also emerged as a very large player. Now this is going to unfold, and my guess is as good as anybody's, so I don't know how it will flow in the next few years. But what will continue, I believe, is the interest of large companies in India. Today, as you can see over the last, if I just take an example of the recent celebrity wedding that happened in Jamnagar, we saw interest from all the big giants. Their CEOs were here. The partnerships that Jio has formed over the last few years is tremendous. Now it is working both ways. It is working because there is more interest in India from the large companies. There is interest in India from the startups, which are now saturating in their countries and want to look at where the world's 1/3 of the humanity lives. And this large population, the rise of India as a soft power is, I think, going to throw up again a lot of opportunities. What implications does it have for the CMA is that we need to be at the cutting edge of quality when we provide any advisory service, any audit service, anything, the dealing with the client, the way in which we hire talent, the way we structure our practices, the way we implement technology in our practices. If we miss the ball this time, all the large companies, the big fours and the multinationals are going to take away the professional services as well. the unique combination of us knowing the country well and being able to provide a global quality of services is, I think, going to be the litmus test whether the professional of tomorrow will survive this onslaught of the large corporations, which, by the way, will be much better at AI, digital, and everything else, right? So we need to put that extra effort to be improving ourselves on that. What the institute can do perhaps is maybe look for foreign collaborations, try to have a voice in the international accreditation agencies, try to hold conventions here which are more international in nature, not just national, but maybe the next global convention should be brought to the country. But providing that collaboration, partnerships, peg the curriculum to the global standard so that a CMA here can practice everywhere. By the way, allow others to practice in India. Open it up so that competition will make the Indian CMA better by competing with the global best. And that brings me to the last trend. The last trend, I also chose this to be the last trend, not because it is less important, because it directly ties into the next speaker. The trend is that of ESG, the environmental and sustainable and social, environmentally sustainable and social governance, and DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think there has been already a lot of work at the council level and within the institute on this. I think every professional, and therefore the CMA professional is no exception, would, as in we all know that this is going to stay. The ESG and the DEI is no longer a debate. It is just a matter of time. It becomes the part of the regulation. It becomes a part of the taxation. It becomes a part of the competitive environment in the country. And I think that is where one needs to pick up the trend early on and start becoming a professional who understands ESG, imbibes DEI, how diverse in terms of gender, culture, nationality, how diverse is your own practice, how diverse is your own team, how diverse are your thoughts, how environmentally sustainable is your own practice and your thoughts that is going to drive your advice. If you don't understand ESG, you are not going to be having a seat on the table in the next few years. So it is no longer now an option that we need to understand what is ESG, what is DEI, but it has become a very integral part. For us, it has become a part of the curriculum. For companies, it has become a part of their policies. It has become a part of the DNA. And in the next 20, 25 years, while we try to become a developed nation, if this doesn't become a part of the DNA, it is not going to work. And therefore, as a professional, we will have to play a very strong role in imbibing this in every audit you do, in every advice you provide, the green buildings, the ability of companies to be carbon neutral, zero carbon footprint, and so on. So just to summarize, these are the 6 trends I briefly spoke about, and I'll just list them out: AI and automation in decision making, digital transformation and hybrid mode of working, the need for lifelong learning, entrepreneurship and innovation driving Indian economy, the rise of India in the global south, and finally ESG and DEI. In conclusion, I think I would like to add that these trends, as we see, as I see, as people in consulting see, are going to shape the future. I think it is imperative upon each one of us, and perhaps the convention here itself is a very good beginning to start thinking about it, start thinking about our future. So with this, I would like to conclude and wish each one of us here in this room good luck, and hope you get some time to leverage your networks, strengthen your networks, and try to become a better professional for the next 2 days and as we move towards 2047. Thank you very much.